Hi everyone, welcome to Hysterrified Podcast, a horror movie review podcast. I'm Paola.
And I'm Danielle.
And today...
we are spooky again!
We're so spooky! We're demons this time, as you can see. So yes, today we're very spooky, and we're going to be talking about Trick or Treat, the 2007 movie. It is an American anthology horror comedy film written and directed by Michael Dougherty and produced by Bryan Singer. The film stars Dylan Baker, Rochelle Aites, Anna Paquin, and Brian Cox. So, as always, before we start, we want to let you know
it's going to be spoilers. So, if you haven't seen this movie and you want to go watch it, you can go and watch it first. If not, stick around. And we're going to tell you about it with lots of spoilers.
Yeah. So here is a short synopsis. Interwoven stories demonstrate that some traditions are best not forgotten as the residents of a small town face real ghosts and goblins on Halloween. Tales of terror reveal the consequences of extinguishing a jack-o'-lantern before midnight and a grumpy hermit's encounter with a sinister trick-or-treater. Ooh. Before we start, we want to shout out our friend Ale, who actually recommended this movie, and she listened to the podcast. So thank you, Ale.
Thank you.
We hope you liked the episode. So before we get into what we liked and what we didn't like, I wanted to share some fun facts with you guys. As always, I will leave the article where I found the facts in the description. But these are actually based off of the commentary in the collector's edition Blu-ray that came out not too long ago. So the director Michael Dougherty was doing commentary on the movie, and these are where the facts came from. So the first one is that the opening credits that are in a comic book style kind of. Apparently they include artwork from various members of the team. Of the people that made the movie. And he said basically anybody who could draw contributed to the opening title sequence, and then he also said that there are childhood photos from various cast and crew too.
Wow.
So that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
And it was a cool intro sequence too. It was really neat, and it was nice to know that it was put together by everyone who was in the cast and crew.
Yeah, that's really neat. It also reminded me of how we said with the ones in the past where it's kind of like a TV show where it breaks from the movie to go to a separate screen to put the opening scene sequence, opening credits.
Yeah, last time it was when we watched *Malignant*. But I feel like it makes more sense in this movie.
Yeah.
Because this movie is it's supposed to be anthology style, so it makes sense that there's somewhat of an intro sequence. So Michael Dougherty also said that the vomit I'm pretty sure the vomit that the kid throws up after he eats the bad candy was actually made of all edible ingredients, and he tried it and he said it was really tasty.
I thought it looked like chocolate milk at first, and then when they showed later the guy's the killer's shirt, I thought that I was oh, I guess it was supposed to be blood colored, but when it was in a darker lighting, it just looked like chocolate milk, and I was oh, he's throwing up all the chocolate he ate.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. I thought it looked like chocolate syrup, a little bit thicker, but yeah, apparently it was very tasty. Also, for the candy, they couldn't use any recognizable wrappers for, probably the brands would be upset about it. He said, because all of our candy in this film is either poisoned or filled with razor blades, they had to create their own brands instead. And he said, which was kind of fun because we came up with stuff like Big Fudge Log. That's pretty neat. That's a whole other creative component too of making a movie is coming up with the props and things that are super specific to the world that you're creating.
Yeah. So. There's this one, I don't remember what movie it was, but I remember they had very distinct off-brand versions of sodas and TV dinners and stuff like that, and I thought they were really funny, but I can't remember from what now. But
yeah, usually I know for TV shows there's a few standard chip brands several TV shows will use, so that you'll see them in different TV shows, which is kind of funny. But yeah, I feel that's something that the average person doesn't really think about, but it's also something that needs to happen and people put work into it. So this next fact I thought was really interesting. He said that the performers under the masks playing the kids on the school bus all have real disabilities or injuries. And they said that they had a really good time during the shoot, and that their costumes were inspired by a mix of photos from Ralph Meatyard and Diane Arbus. I don't know who that is. Apparently, they captured real mentally disabled children on Halloween in their own homemade costumes.
Oh.
So that's really interesting that they decided to incorporate it, into the movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel like that's really cool. It's a really inclusive and respectful way to portray people with disabilities in the movie.
Sometimes movies have no regard for people with disabilities, and they tend to kind of over exaggerate certain things or make them the butt of a joke in order to serve their story, even though that's not really necessary. So I think it's really neat that he decided to do something like that. So the last fact that I have for you is that the werewolf transformations were done practically with CG enhancements, but mostly practically, which is really cool. And and it said that Dougherty knows that fully CG transformations are hot garbage, so that's why he wanted to do them at least partially practical, which is really neat.
Yeah, that's funny.
And this was in 2007 too, so I feel like there was a period there with CGI that where now it's good and it looks good and it looks realistic. It's still obvious. I feel like it's not. I feel like it's very hard that you can completely not distinguish CGI. But I feel like there was a hot minute in the early 2000s where it was it was technologically evolved enough to use it a lot more, but it still wasn't all there. So I feel like, from the perspective of having made this movie in 2007, I feel like I know exactly what he means. So yeah, so I can see why he thought, it might look like hot garbage if he ended up going full CG, because CG was better than it was in the 90s, but it still wasn't all the way there, So I think it was a smart choice.
Yeah. I will say, as soon as you started saying that, there's one specific instance that comes to mind, and I'm looking at you, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, when
it's getting spicy in here.
I mean, it was good for the time. I think the first one came out in 2001 or 2002 or something like that. So it was good for the time, but
which
you
scene?
Watch it now when Neville goes flying up and he's oh, and then he falls onto the sword and he's hanging and he's oh, and then he falls to the ground
and you can see that it's a CG Neville. Yeah. Go back and watch that if you haven't in a while, because I remember that.
Yeah, we watched it recently-ish, and every time I see it, I'm just like, ooh.
Nice try.
I mean, you're not fooling me.
I can imagine. I think that at the time it must have fooled people,
Yeah, I think it's probably pretty good, and it goes by pretty quick. So if you're just whoa,
and also now we have super HD fucking 4K resolution, so it only makes it more obvious, when it's bad. So those were all my fun facts.
Nice.
So Danielle, what did you like about this movie?
Quite a few things, actually. I will say that one of my favorite things about this movie is there was a lot of misdirection where, you think one thing's going to happen, but then really it's another situation. Specifically with the girls being werewolves.
Yeah.
And when you think that the principal, Wilkins, you think he's about to kill his son, and he pulls the knife out and there's blood on it, and you think, damn, he just stabbed his kid. Yeah. But then it's no, he's teaching him how to be a fucking serial killer or something.
Yeah, that was neat.
And it's interesting, too, because he says, oh, yeah, just like Grandpa used to do with me. And so it's a family line of serial killers or something.
That's wild.
Yeah. I don't know how he's a principal of a school and he's getting away with all this shit, but
I know, he wasn't very slick either.
Mm-mm.
But yeah, I agree with you. That's one of the things that I like too. I feel like it sets everything up to go down the road of something cliche, something that always happens in horror movies, and then it kind of flips that on you, and it's like it does something that you don't really expect, which I really like. So that's one of the things that I like too. So I really like the look of it. I think that, I don't know if it's like the color grading or just like how they decided to like dress up the set or something, I don't know, but I feel like the movie has a really like classic look to it. I think the color grading makes like things that are orange look really orange, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
Because I feel like it makes it have like some sort of a visual theme, especially since like it's about like Halloween and pumpkins are orange and there's all this like jack-o'-lantern situation going on. So I thought that was really cool. I feel like it really adds to like the atmosphere of the movie, and it really makes it like, you know, super like Halloween-y, which I really like.
I thought it was really, really neat and very creative that they used candy as weapons in like different ways too, like multiple ways. That they used them as like obviously like poison. They had that lollipop that he used as a knife to like slit the lady's throat. They had glass in the candy that the old man fell on top of.
Yeah.
And then there was also the one that straight up just looked like it was like a razor blade inside the wrapper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I feel like it adds to like the Halloween theme of everything, you know?
Definitely, yeah. It's like even candy's dangerous.
Watch out. Candy. So this kind of goes with my first point in that I feel like the whole look of it and like the subjects and like the storylines and everything all have like a lot of really cool like old school like charm, if that makes sense. And like the fact that it's all kind of centered around Halloween, I feel like makes it a really good movie to obviously to watch this time of year. And then also like I feel like it has a lot of like rewatchability.
Yeah.
Because it is like smaller stories that are kind of like more condensed and intertwined together, they still make like a very entertaining movie, you know, all in all. So I just really like, you know, when horror movies incorporate Halloween. Obviously it's like not a super unique thing, but I feel like the way that this movie did it, I feel like was really, really unique. It was like its own, you know, its own world. Like Halloween was the main like bad thing that made all these other bad things happen because of the whole like theme with the jack-o'-lantern like not turning it off or blowing it out or whatever before midnight. That's kind of the theme that surrounds all of these stories, right? So I think it uses like Halloween as like a holiday in a really creative way, in a way that I haven't seen in a lot of other movies. So
and the way that they used it as a device to, like you said, as either to be the catalyst for things going wrong or also as a protection against things, which was neat. It was like setting up like rules of the world, I guess.
Yeah. I also really liked the fact that this was like a scary movie, but it was more like a horror comedy. So it wasn't like as like anxiety inducing as other horror movies are, which like don't get me wrong, I love being scared and I love that like the feeling of suspense and everything. But I felt like because it was a horror comedy and because there were certainly like, you know, horror elements and more like spooky things, it was never like so like fear-inducing that I felt uncomfortable. So it made for like a really enjoyable viewing experience, if that makes sense. Because it wasn't like, I could tell kind of from the beginning that it wasn't trying to like be the kind of movie that scares the shit out of you. It was just kind of like a horror movie, but with more like comedic elements that let you enjoy like the horror elements a little bit more, because you're not so worried about like, when am I going to get jump scared, or, you know, when is this, you know, crazy thing going to happen and all that. So I feel like it made me like really be able to enjoy it and really like bask in like the spooky Halloween-ness of it all without feeling too like, you know, like without feeling that like guttural feeling of like, you know, I'm about to get jump scared at any moment, you know?
I think it did a really good job too of being like subtly like comedy, and it definitely feels like it was intentional too. Like it wasn't like how we said in Malignant, where it felt like there was really over dramatic moments that were not supposed to be
funny, but
funny,
they were.
but they were.
Mm-hmm.
But here, it feels like there was places where it was intentionally funny, but it wasn't like, hey, look it, we're trying to be funny.
Right,
Laugh
right.
at this.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was, just like sprinkled in there.
Yeah. I really liked, on the comedy front, I really liked the main, well, he wasn't the main actor, but the main, like, serial killer guy.
Principal?
Steven, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He was really good.
Mm-hmm.
He reminded me of both Tim Curry and Stephen Colbert, like, meshed in one. But yeah, he had, like, really good, like, comedic timing, and also just, like, the juxtaposition of him being, like, such a goofy character, but at the same time, like, a pretty crazy serial killer, you know?
Yeah.
There was, like, tons of dark humor, too, so I feel like, all in all, it was, like, very well balanced, like you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't, like, too in your face, where it was, like, this is obviously a joke or a spoof, or something like Scary Movie or something like that, where it's, like, very obviously heavy-handedly more comedy than it is horror. It was, like, still horror, but it was, like, giving you some comedy, and it was really well balanced, I think.
The little Halloween goblin boy, I don't know if he had a name in the credits, but the one that had, like, the little bag, the canvas bag over his head. I don't know, I guess maybe it wasn't a boy. I guess it's just
No, I think
being.
I think it was supposed to be a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say I didn't exactly like the face, but I liked that idea of him being a pumpkin, and, like, when the old guy shot him and he, like, pumpkin guts came out, and his back of his head was shaped like a pumpkin, but the front of his head was really confusing because it looked like a skeleton alien, like, I don't know what, it looked kind of goofy.
So the last thing that I liked, which we already kind of touched on, but it was the whole, like, practical effects aspect of it. Again, especially in that scene where they do, like, the werewolf transformation. I feel like that was my favorite scene in the whole movie, just because it was, like, very unexpected, and I think the transformation was really cool. And I feel like it was just, I don't know, overall it was just, like, my favorite moment, like, story-wise, and also, like, visuals-wise, I guess. Just because it was really neat.
That scene was very, like, it caught me off guard, which made it really cool.
Yeah.
There was a Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island shout out in the middle of the movie. Yeah, when the old guy, I guess it wasn't in the middle, it was more towards the end, when the old guy's, like, flipping through the channels. There was some other horror movie I didn't recognize, it looked very old, and then the next movie that he switched to afterwards for a few moments was Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island, and it's very interesting the scene that they chose, because it's when the zombie, well, not the zombies, it's when the cat people, they're kind of like in the concept of a werewolf, like when the moon comes out at a certain time, they transform into cat people, and it's very similar to how the ladies turn into werewolves. So I feel like that was supposed to be kind of like a parallel.
That's cool.
Or something. So that was really awesome.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Scooby-Doo fan.
Yeah, she's a doo-head.
I'm a doo-head. The last thing I'll say that I like is that Rhonda and the school bus victims, and in a way the little boy who threw up the chocolate milk stuff, like, they all get, like, revenge in a way, because the people get killed that did some sort of harm to them.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting. What did you not like about this movie?
So we already talked about, like, the fact that the storylines are all kind of separate, but they're still, like, intertwined. I think that it took a little bit long for that to happen, because I want to say, like, the first maybe, like, 20 minutes of the movie, I was enjoying it, but I was confused. I was, like, very confused about what was going on, how, like, one thing related to the other one, and it was just kind of, like, I wasn't really seeing where it was going, and I feel like it was making me just, like, really anticipate that moment when everything clicked, you know? And so I feel like even though the storylines were really good on their own, and I ended up actually really liking like how they concluded and how they all connected, the fact that there was this thing in the back of my head that while I was watching the movie and I was trying to like enjoy it, of me thinking like, okay, where is this going? Or like, okay, when are these gonna connect? Like, I think that went on for a little bit too long. But I understand that, like, you know, it's an anthology, so these are all meant to be semi-separate stories in the first place, and maybe they just really wanted to build up to that suspense of like finally revealing to you how these all connect. But yeah, that was one thing, and it might have just been me. It might have just been like the kind of movie watcher that I am. I'm kind of always anticipating like the next big plot point, and I think that, you know, that is to my detriment sometimes. But I like when movies get to the point, and if they don't get to the point right away, they at least like tease you about what it is that's going to happen. And this movie doesn't really do that because the stories are so, you know, separate at first, and they kind of come together. What did you not like about this movie?
I will say that in some parts I felt like something was missing. I don't know if it was something in like the storyline or something with like the characters, like maybe because it was 4 separate stories, that we didn't get like as much dialogue or character background or motivation or anything like that for a lot of the characters. But something about it was lacking, and I can't quite put my finger on what. It was still enjoyable, but it wasn't like I don't know, like other movies that we've watched, I guess. Yeah.
I think that I agree with you. That's actually the other thing that I didn't like so much. It was the fact that because these are, you know, more like truncated, shorter stories that were all kind of linked together, we don't really get that like, you know, deep character development and things. Those are the kind of things that as a viewer you really are meant to connect with. So when that's lacking, then it makes you feel like, yeah, I had a good time watching this movie, but I don't really sort of feel any sort of way about the characters because I didn't really connect with them. So I feel like that's kind of how I felt too. I was like, well, I liked this movie, you know. I had a bit of a hard time coming up with what I didn't like because I felt like overall it was an enjoyable experience, but I'm with you that I felt like something was missing. So it was probably that. It was probably just like the fact that because they were meant to be shorter stories that were like supposed to all happen simultaneously, we didn't really get a chance to like really get to know these characters and really connect with them, so that then we could, you know, care more about what happened to them and stuff like that. But yeah, I really wish that, you know, obviously there is a way to like show more about maybe like before he died, or before we saw what we saw with the principal. I feel like that would have been really interesting to see, like, how long has he been doing this? Like, how long has his son been aware? Like, when did he become aware? So it's really interesting. Same with the, you know, with the girls that are the werewolves. Like, that's a really good, interesting storyline on its own. Especially because I feel like usually in like werewolf type of things, usually it's men that are werewolves. So I thought it was really cool that it was actually like women that were werewolves. So there was a lot about it that had like so much potential, and it was super interesting that I really want to know more about. But like sadly, like that's just the way that movies work sometimes. Like you get what you get, and you don't really there's no other way for you to kind of extrapolate it or find out more about it, because that's just what it is, you know.
I will just say that I thought that when the ladies started, like, when I realized something was up with the ladies, that I was like, oh yeah, they're witches. I started writing witches in my notes like immediately, and then I was like,
wait a
there's
minute.
stuff going on. I was like, they're vampires. And then I was like, no, they're werewolves. I was like, oh shit, that's not very common.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, that was cool.
The other thing, this is just kind of going off of what you said, that it would have been cool to get more of a backstory or an understanding of who/what the little Halloween goblin boy is. And I was wondering, do you think is he supposed to be like the embodied spirit of like Halloween or something? I feel like too that it wasn't like just the jack-o'-lantern thing that would trigger him to attack people. It's like if you do anything that's like not in the Halloween spirit, like disrespecting the Halloween spirit,
Yeah.
I guess, like the old guy didn't have anything outside of his house and he didn't give the kids candy, but as soon as like he stabbed the guy and like got a piece of candy,
Yeah.
that he like walked away and left.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. So I guess it's like,
Don't disrespect candy. I mean,
don't
Halloween.
Yeah, don't do it.
He put some respect on Halloween's name.
So I'm gonna send the little Halloween goblin boy after you. And then another thing that I didn't write in my notes, but I thought of earlier, how we were saying like, oh yeah, good for them for being like inclusive and stuff like that. But then also they were using the R word like a whole bunch, and I mean I get that it was back in the early 2000s and that word was still like being used like a lot, and like there wasn't much of
especially in media, I feel like.
Oh yeah, there wasn't like much like pushback of people like being like, hey, that's not cool, but like that wouldn't fly now. So
yeah, definitely.
But besides that, I feel like there's a lot of movies where I see stuff like that and I kind of just like I write it in my notes, like I make a note of it, like I put like, oh, that was gross, or oh, that was lame that they put that or whatever. But most of the time I don't bring it up because it's like there's gonna be a lot of that then.
Yeah, it's definitely dated in that sense. So Danielle, what did you rate this movie?
I gave this movie a 7.6 out of 10 lollipop knives.
Nice.
So Paula,
Yes.
what did you rate this movie?
I rated this movie a 7.7 out of 10 sharp pieces of candy.
Hey!
Very similar. We are connected by our demon horns.
Yes. It really makes you think.
So that's going to be it for today's episode. We hope that you guys enjoyed it and you had a good old spooky time with us. If you've seen this movie, let us know what you thought in the comments. Again, if you have any comments or questions or movie suggestions, you can email us at danielleandpaula@gmail.com. And if you would like to submit your favorite movie to watch during this Halloween season, then you can either message us on our social media profiles or email us and let us know what's your favorite movie, and maybe we'll add it to our list for October.
And then also, if you want to follow us on social media so you can like send us those movie submissions and all that, our Instagram handle is going to be hysterrifiedpodcast. We also have our Twitter, and that one is hysterrifiedpod, and we post updates on there as well. And then also, if you are listening on the Apple Podcast app, it would be awesome if you give us a rating and a review. We'd greatly appreciate it.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. We hope you're having a really good spooky season. We'll see you on our next episode. Bye!